Welcome to the Smart Connector, the podcast that helps entrepreneurs be the leader their ideal people love. Build your influence, wealth and success, attract others for all the right reasons, and become the Smart Connector, the architect of your amazing business and life. Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. I'm Jane Bayler and I'm delighted to bring you this interview with a very special entrepreneur and founder of the Disruptors Club, Andy Brown. After a troubled childhood and youth, Andy qualified as a commercial pilot. He then went into marketing and advertising as an account director and founded and built his own very successful agency as well as a property business. Today, Andy's mission is to help online businesses launch and scale through his tried and tested methodologies and roadmap. He's had some incredible success stories, and if you'd like to check them out, just head on over to thedisruptorsclub.com. Andy, it's so great to have you here with us today, and I know you've got so much to offer our listeners. So I'd like to really go back to the beginning and actually talk about who you are, what inspired you to do what you do today, what your history is, just so that our listeners can understand a bit more about you and what makes you tick.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me as well. Absolute pleasure to be on your podcast. I think if we go back to the very beginning, I had a fairly torrid childhood, which in turn affected my schooling quite a bit, in that I didn't really go to school, or I wouldn't turn up, and I was a bit of a bad boy, to be honest. It was just because of the way things were. Consequently, I left school at 15 without any real education. I hadn't taken any exams, and then I left home at 16, and I went off into the big wide world with a vision to fly aeroplanes, because we had a family friend who was a pilot, and he'd inspired me to fly planes. But I was kind of up against it a bit because I had no formal education, I had no money, and I just had my surfboard in my bag, and I left home and I got on a bus and I went. So I hustled and I worked jobs and I did what I had to do to get the money to go through flight school. I did that, and I think I started flying lessons about 4 years later. And then the vision was to go through, get my wings, and then go on to be a commercial pilot. That was kind of what I wanted to do. So I managed to scrape through flying school. It was really difficult because I had no education as such. So I managed to get through there. And then, you know what, when I got to the end of it and I got my wings, I thought there was going to be this massive moment of like, I've done it and I'm off on my journey. And it just wasn't. It was just this sort of, right, what was that all about? And it was really strange. And I had to really explore that. And I thought, I'm not sure I want to go down the route of being a commercial pilot because I'll just end up in the system again as another employee. So I had to think really hard about that. And I thought, well, look, if I've managed to do this, if I've managed to get my wings in the adversity of not really having an education, I thought, I wonder if I could apply that to something else. So I stood back and I realized that I didn't want to work for anybody else. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted the freedom. And so what I did is I started applying that to building businesses. So I had a job at the time. And so I started with my side hustles. And I employed the same sort of process as learning to fly, as building a business, which is literally a system. You start with the end in mind and you work backwards. And then you put those things in place and it gives you the clarity on what you need to do. So that's what I started doing. And then I built my branding and marketing business first, which I still have today. That was probably 20 years ago now. And then what I was doing is I was working in that business, Jane, and I was enjoying it. I was really enjoying it, but I knew there was something missing. And then people started asking me, they were saying, how did you build your business and how did you do what you're doing and live the life you live? And what I did is I started meeting people for coffees and I started helping them and coaching them, mentoring them in doing the same sort of thing. And then Jules, my partner, said to me one day, she said, Andy, I know you love doing this. She said, but you're taking your eye off the ball of your business, your brand and marketing business, and something's going to have to give. You're going to either have to monetize it, what you're doing in terms of your coaching and mentoring people, or you're going to have to stop and go back to brand and marketing. And I was really conflicted about this because I thought, I think I've found what I love doing. I love helping people. And so what we did is we turned that into a business club because I didn't want to serve just one to one, as in one to one mentoring, because you're limited on that in terms of your time and how many people you can serve. So we thought, well, why don't we do it in a group setting? And then that's where we came up with the Disruptors Club, which was kind of like just a business club. It was for people to come together and share the journey because we know how tough it can be. And then that evolved into what it is today, where we have core trainings and core content inside of there. And the point of this is that I found what I really love doing, which was not what I thought. I thought it was going to be flying planes around the skies. So that's kind of like the potted history of how it went from that to what I do today.
Well, that's really quite an amazing summary in a very short space of time. So that's very, very inspiring. And I'm particularly interested, just if we can go back for a moment, you talked about your childhood. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I also had a pretty difficult childhood. And I think that it definitely had an impact in terms of my perspective and my choices as well.
Right.
So I'd just like to hear a little bit more about that, Andy. So where did you grow up? I'm guessing from your accent that it's somewhere around Manchester.
Funny. That's interesting. No, I was born in the northeast near Newcastle.
Newcastle, right. I'm
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in northern accents. Okay, Newcastle, right.
Yeah.
So tell me, what were your circumstances growing up and what actually led to you leaving school? Did you have, for example, a lot of people have an undiagnosed dyslexia or sometimes they just have very, very turbulent family conditions that makes them want to kind of get out and experience a better life. So which one of those was it for you?
It was the family side of it. I was the youngest in terms of our family and the entire cousins, and I just didn't have a good time at home at
Yeah.
all. So consequently, you start looking for something else. And at the
Mhm.
time, I actually got into quite a bit of trouble because you do as a child start looking for that attention, I guess it was.
Mm.
And I got into motorbikes really young, and I got into
Mhm.
sort of the wrong crowd. And then actually, what was a defining moment for me was when I was 15. I was out. For some reason, I was really good at mechanics and fixing bikes and things like that. Of course, I wasn't legal age to ride them. And I'd gone with the guys. I'd taken this guy's bike and I'd gone with him to Scarborough Road Race. We were living in Yorkshire at the time.
Mm.
And I'd gone with the guys because I just wanted to be around people
Yeah.
who were sort of interested in me. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
And I went off illegally on this bike, and it just ended up in this massive. Basically, got chased by the police on my motorbike, and I, it just ended up in a big crash. And then I ended up going to court, and I was told by the solicitor that I was going away. I was going to bad boys prison. So I was like, it's not good. So, but what had happened is when I'd had my accident, the police actually they'd beaten up on me a little bit while I was lying in the road. So that saved my bacon when we went to court because I thought I was going to be sent away for about 3 years for these motoring offences.
Mm.
And that was my turning point, Jane, where I thought I've
Mhm.
got one more chance here to either get out or I'm going to end up either in prison or dead. And that was the big moment when I decided I'm leaving school and I'm leaving home at 16 when I was allowed to do it.
Mm.
So it was all of that. It was the family life and then getting into trouble that made me pack up and leave. Basically, it was survival mode, if you like.
Mm. But it's very, very inspiring because a lot of young people don't come back from that.
Mm.
And of course, we all know that if you have a supportive family who are right behind you, that it's much easier to get launched in life and to be successful. So I think your story is very, very inspiring. The fact that you've come from that background, it wasn't easy for you. You were on your own at a very, very early age, and you could have gone down that route that so many young people do. And yet there was something in you, as you said, a defining moment that could have gone any which way. And in fact, it was that moment that propelled you towards the life that you have now, right?
Definitely, definitely. And you know what the thing was? Nobody at the time when I was growing up, not my family nor my teachers, it's probably different now. Nobody ever stopped me and said, "What's wrong?" You know,
Mm.
What's up? And I think that's the problem, that if somebody had actually said, what's the problem? And they started addressing that, then you wouldn't go down that road. And I reflect on that a lot now, and I hope that's changed. I hope there's more insight for people to look at people who are in trouble and say, what's actually wrong?
Yes.
Can I help?
Yes, yes, indeed. So, you talked about your early training as a pilot, and that in itself is an incredible achievement because I know that you have to go through a lot of tests and checks and all sorts of things to actually get a license as a pilot, don't you, Andy? So, I mean, how on earth did you manage that if you didn't have any qualifications? How did you do it?
It was tough. It was interesting because I remember when I finally got the money to pay for the course, and I remember going in the flying room and saying, "Here's my money. I want to learn to fly." And they said, "That's great. Just wait there, and we'll bring you the starter pack, I think." And they brought this huge pack out, and they put it down in front of me, and there was 7 manuals, 7 volumes of books that I had to read
Wow.
to study. And I was just like, "What have I done?" It's like, "Can I get my money back?" So I sat there looking at it, and I hadn't realized what I'd bitten off. And I just thought, I can never do this. Then they brought out some charts, and then they brought out rulers, and they brought out a protractor. I'm like, what does that do? So I was in this huge meltdown looking at this stuff going, I'll never do this. I will never do this. And then I picked up the first book and I started flicking through it. And I thought, well, if I do it one step at a time, one book at a time, I can do this. And that's what I did. It probably took me 4 times as long because there was no internet back then. You couldn't just Google something to find out what it meant. They were
Mm.
literally printed books. So you had to study these, and then you had to sit your exams at the end of each one. And I literally just did it step by step, which again is how I've developed my courses for my my disruptors is about, if you take it step by step, you can pretty much achieve anything you want. So that's how I did it.
Well, and that's amazing because you actually learnt that lesson very, very early in life because, again, nobody was handing anything to you on a plate. So you were thrown back on your own resources and you had to dig deep to do that. But that achievement must have been incredibly validating for you.
It was indeed, but I think again conflicting at the end of it,
Yep.
when you sort of think, wow, what was that all about? I think what it maybe proved to me was I wasn't academically, not that I couldn't do it, I just never applied myself at school. But
Hmm.
still, when you get through there and they hand you the wings, it's like, wow, I've done it. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're right, and I think for your own, as you know, Jane, if you've had a tough time early on, for your own self esteem, it's just huge.
It really is. And I think if you get those wins early in life, then I think, as you said, it's just if you haven't got anybody else saying to you, you're great and you're going to go far and it just takes this and it just takes that, something like that, it's very, very precious, I think. It is important. And you still fly today, don't you, Andy?
I do, yeah. I had shares in an aeroplane here in Jersey, but as we record this, we're about to move to Spain and Gibraltar, COVID permitting.
Yes.
So I've just sold my shares in my plane, but yeah, I'm still an active pilot, and we do a lot, and I'll take it up again when we get to Spain. And I love it. I love the freedom of it, and again, that's why I probably didn't pursue the commercial route, because I know some commercial pilots get caught up in the bureaucracy and the business side of it, and they're slave
Yeah.
to it. Whereas I just want the freedom of the skies, basically. So yeah, absolutely love it. It's great.
Sounds good to me. So let's talk about the work that you did and how you came to found your marketing agency. I actually ran an agency myself, so and I worked in that world for 20 years. So I'm very, very interested always to talk to other people who've been down that route. So I'd love to hear how you got started, how you decided that marketing and branding was something that was interesting to you and what you got out of it really.
Sure. When I was saving up to fly, I got involved in a small studio, and they had one of the first Mac Pluses, the first ever Apple Mac. So I was kind of intrigued by this. I was like, what is this thing, this magical box? So I got involved with it there, and then I dabbled with the creative side of it. And then as I worked through, I ended up in the agency life, as you know, the agency life, which was brutal, which was
Yes.
absolutely brutal in terms of, I was an account director,
Yeah.
and what went on behind the walls of the agency. I'm not saying this is every agency. These were the ones that I worked for. What went on behind there versus me going out as a client, a customer-facing account director, it didn't stack with my values because I knew the agents were ripping people off. They were doing the wrong things behind closed doors, and they were sending me out into the firing line. And I
Yeah.
just thought, I'm not doing this anymore because my values don't allow it. So I thought, somebody actually came to me and said, we don't want to deal with the agencies anymore. Would you do a freelance job for us? It was actually designing a ski brochure for some chalets.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I'm not really a designer, but I'll have a go at it. And I went, and then I had very little money at the time. I went and invested in a Mac, and I got a B&Q desk, and I built it, and I put my Mac on there. And I designed and printed this brochure for this company, and they were absolutely delighted. So I was like, wow, I'm maybe onto something here. And this was a side hustle. And then the next season, they flew me out to Maribel to do the photography. I was like, wow, amazing. So I was like, this is not too bad. So then I just built it from there. I just kept building it up, and I got more clients, and that's how the business started. But then I moved into another company, and I was brand manager for 23 car brands. So from Nissan up to Bentley, I was their brand manager, and that was one of my last jobs. And I just loved it. I loved the branding. I loved the whole marketing of it, and that's how that came about. And then I finally jumped ship and just ran that business full time. That's the side of that.
It's funny to hear you talk about it, because there are so many parallels with my experience. I mean, I don't know what agencies you worked for, but I certainly had that experience because I was an account director as well. I was
Right.
working for some big global advertising agencies and television companies, and I worked for an events company, and we also worked on automotive. So I know that on the one hand, there's the incredible sort of thrill and there's the fun of it, because it is fun. Marketing is fun, and it's particularly as a young person, it's got a lot going for it. But at the same time, the pressure is insane.
Mm-hmm.
And, it can be quite a dirty world, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
People can behave very unethically because they're under so much pressure to perform and to create those revenues. And if you're like stuck in the middle of it, and really being an account director, you're actually between the client and the agency, then you are the person that bears the brunt of that. And it can be very, very uncomfortable. So I totally resonate with everything that you've said there.
Yeah, it's down to values, isn't it? Everything's down to values. Does this feel right or does it not? And it didn't. So I just
Yeah.
had to make the decision to leave, and I couldn't stand in front of people and lie to them because of what was going on behind closed doors. So yeah.
So when you started your own agency, presumably one of the things that was important to you was to bring your own values into that. So how did you do it differently, Andy?
What I did is I made the decision because we were living in Jersey at the time. The resources are limited here in terms of who you can employ and the skill sets. And I'd realized that, and there was people coming and going and moving through the agencies, and it was just like this big whirlpool. So I thought, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up. It's literally just me, and then I found the best contractors around the world that were specialists in what they did. So I found the designers, I found the printers, I found the art workers, and I put it together as a virtual agency. And then I would be the contact, I would be the account director, if you like, or the face of the business. And I built it on meeting people first. And that's when I don't just take any business on. I see if we're going to be a good fit. Do our values align?
Mm.
And that's how I built it. I built it on the values first. I have very, very core select customers, but it's because we work so well together. And then they've become good friends. So that's how I brought it to my particular business rather than it just being this faceless agency. It's about people again, isn't it? Just what you do, Jane. It's all about people.
Indeed, indeed. And I think bringing the right people together and actually defining yourself by your values and your integrity is such a powerful thing to do. I mean, I certainly do that. And since I made that decision, and I think it was around 4 years ago, because even before that, I would sometimes get a bit tempted by people who I just felt a bit, I'm not really sure about.
Mm-hmm.
But since I made that decision, there is absolutely no compromise for me. I totally have to work with people who have the same values as me, then I find life becomes very simple and very rewarding, because you tend to attract people who are going to make your life better, don't you, rather than worse.
Absolutely. It's so empowering, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once you see the vision and you see what can happen, it's just hugely uplifting because these people become good friends as well often. I know mine have, you know.
Indeed, indeed. Let's talk a bit more about the Disruptors Club, Andy. So, where did you get the idea of the name from? I love it.
Oh, the name. My goodness. It took us 2 years to come up with that name.
Did it?
Yeah, did we? Well, there's all entrepreneur this, isn't it? Entrepreneur that. And
Mm.
we were done to death with it, right? And a lot of people, because we asked a lot of people what they thought, and they said, we don't see ourselves as entrepreneurs. So we were like, what are we going to call it? And then Jules, when I say we, Jules and I, my partner, my business partner as well, we drilled really down into it and we said, what are we doing? And we're disrupting the ordinary. We're disrupting the status quo of staying in the jobs, putting up with all the stuff that you and I have put up with. And it's about disrupting ourselves. It's about making change within ourselves. So that's where we started playing around with the word, the Disruptors Club. It's not disruptors as in we're a disruptive industry. It's about disrupting who we are so that we can build a business and live life on our terms. So that's kind of where the name came from in the end.
Amazing. So, how long have you been doing it for, Andy? When did you start?
We started in January last year. We did a live launch in Jersey. And then we closed the doors, and then we're launching again in September. So it's been running about 17 months as it is now.
Yes. Who's your ideal client for the Disruptors Club? What sort of people are you working with right now?
It's interesting because it's evolved. When we started, we did this amazing launch, and we had so many different people join. We had lawyers, we had startups, we had side hustles there, and it was a bit of a melting pot because we didn't really know what we were doing. So we fine tuned it now, and it's for people who want to start an online business. So it's really the startups or people who have made the beginnings of an online business but are stuck. They're confused, they're overwhelmed with all the noise out there.
Yes.
And with that clarity again that I have as a pilot, this is where we built the course, where it's a step-by-step waypoints course for them to follow to build and launch their online business. So that's typically our avatar now. It's interesting now, Jen. We thought it was going to be the younger people. I don't want to be offensive to the people we have in there because I'm not that young myself. But I'm going to be careful here. But we thought it was going to be like the sort of, the early 20s. And when you look at the insights now, our demographic is between sort of 25 and maybe older, 28 to 50
Hmm.
are our core members, which was really interesting for us in terms of, people are still wanting to start businesses later on. So it's been interesting. So it's basically people want to start the online business, give up their job, and basically live life on their terms like we're doing. And the thing with it is, it's not about being the next millionaire. It's about creating the life you want to lead, isn't it? That's all that matters to us.
I think very, very much so. And my daughter is 25, and I see her and her friends, and a lot of them have got corporate jobs and they're working very, very hard. And I think about myself at that age, and I think, you know what, I hadn't really bottomed out on that life. It's obviously they do get kind of hooked into the pay packet. And particularly if you're working in an industry like marketing, it tends to be fairly well paid. And then, there's the adrenaline and the excitement that goes along with that. And I think what tends to happen is it's a process, isn't it, where of exiting that life where you realize that you are not fulfilling your dreams, you're actually fulfilling somebody else's. And I think that tends to hit more in any age and stage from early 30s onwards, typically. Certainly did for me. I mean, I left that life when I was about 40.
Right.
So that was when I was ready to really redefine myself.
It's interesting. A really interesting point here is that Jules, my partner, when we set this up, right? This is the irony of it. When we set this up, she was in the salary trap. She was in
Yeah.
that corporate life, right? Earning a lot of money, good money, had the benefits with it, but hated every second of it. So
Mm.
I said, just jump ship. We can do it now. We've got the money. We can do it. And it was a whole mindset thing for Jules. She needed to see one of the businesses revenue the same as her salary before she would jump ship. And I said, doesn't really work like that, Jules, in our world. You don't get
Yeah.
the same amount every month. And she stayed there until 5 weeks ago when she said, that's it, I'm done. I'm resigning. I don't care what it takes. She'd been beaten down so much with that business that she said, if I don't get out, I'm going to die. It's going to kill me.
Right.
And it was fascinating because people always said to me, if you do what you do in terms of teaching people to build businesses, why does your partner still work for someone? And it was a total mindset for her. She just couldn't
Mm.
step out. I called it Stockholm syndrome. But I said, I said,
Oh,
I said, your captors have
poor
got you.
Jules. Oh, I feel for her.
It was just awful. But she finally done it, and she said, "I don't care." She said, "I will do anything to get out of that place." And now she's starting her own business, and she's like me. We're over 50 now, and she's just launching a new business now. So the point of this is, it's never too late, is it? Never.
It's absolutely never too late. And I think a lot of people limit themselves and they say, oh, I'm going to be coming up to retirement by the time I make this business successful. And look, the rules have changed massively
Hmm.
today. People are living a lot longer for starters. There are so many advances in terms of healthcare. I've noticed that. I mean, even my father, he's 96, which is
Wow.
just incredible. He's got all his marbles. I mean, obviously, he's not terribly active now, but people do live for a lot longer. And really, I personally believe that you can start a business at any age because you have complete flexibility, really, don't you? You can start any kind of a business as long as you have the energy and the motivation and the knowledge and the right mindset to make it work.
Absolutely. And the thing is, people, this is one of my number one self-limiting beliefs that I break down for people. They say I'm too old, and what am I
Yeah.
going to do?
Yeah.
So the older we get, the more experience we have.
Mhm.
And if someone's behind us on that path and we can help them accelerate through our experience, just not qualifications, because again, I haven't got any qualifications other than my flying. If we can help people with our experience, you've got a business model, haven't you? You know?
Indeed.
And that's why I think this self-limiting belief of I'm too old, you're not, because you've just got more experience. I know I have it at my age now. Whereas when you're 20 and 2021, trying to be a life coach is a little bit difficult. Um,
Very much so.
but they're out there, aren't they? You can see them, and I'm like, not sure. You might have to go around the block a couple of times first.
That's an interesting point because I personally believe that the people with the most valuable lessons in life are the people that have failed and failed repeatedly. And I'm not necessarily saying business failures, but any kind of failure, any attempt to do something that puts you outside of your comfort zone. Is a learning experience, and those cumulative learning experiences, as long as you have the right mindset and you actually see them as such rather than being somebody that allows yourself to lapse into perhaps a feeling of victimhood or kind of bitterness or all of those kind of negative mindsets, makes you a stronger and a better and more valuable person to others. That's definitely what I believe.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had some huge failures. I've gone into business with people. It's collapsed. I've lost lots of money, and
Yep.
it's exactly that, Jen. It's not a failure; it's a lesson, isn't it? And it's how you come back from that.
Well, absolutely. And I have also had that experience with people, and I know plenty of others who have also gone into business with the wrong person. And that's is very, very, very common. Just as in life, sometimes we have relationships with the wrong
Hmm.
people and, they don't work out. So I'd love to hear more about your lessons of coming through those experiences with the wrong people in the wrong businesses, that tipping point where you thought, you know what, this is not going to work and I have to do something about it.
One big example was I went into not knowing what I was doing really early days in like being a business owner and entrepreneur. And I went into business with two friends. I knew nothing about it, didn't know what I was doing. I think I paid about £40,000 to go into this business, which was worth nothing. And pretty pretty soon after that, I borrowed the money as well. I borrowed it from a private lending company. So So it was
Well
all,
done.
yeah, I know, yeah, the big lesson coming up. So that all went south rapidly, and they basically ousted me out of the business. So I was out. I had nowhere to live. Literally, I'd been staying at a friend's flat. I had no car, and I was 40,000 in debt that I had to pay back.
Oh, wow.
And I remember, honestly, I remember the night when I walked out. And I thought, what am I going to do? And I was literally walking up the street thinking, I'm finished. I have no idea I'm going to do this. And so I had to regroup. This was out the back of my brand and marketing business, which I'd incorporated into their business as well. So I didn't even have any
Oh,
clients.
oh.
So I was like, what am I going to do? So I took a few days to just clear my head. And I think one thing about being trained to fly planes is you're trained to get clarity fairly quickly when things go wrong. And
Mm.
and that's been a huge asset for me as well. We have a saying that's aviate, navigate, communicate when things go wrong. So aviate, fly the plane, navigate, where do I need to go to, communicate, tell someone. So that's a mantra we use on the flight deck when things go wrong. So I've always applied that to these adversities that I've had as well. So I sat back, I thought about it, and then I thought, do you know what? That wasn't right. And then they started, this great story, they started bugging me about a mobile phone that I had in the business that I was still using. And one of the
Oh,
guys was sending me these letters, right, saying, you owe us money, you owe us money. And I was sending the letters back saying, it's not my phone number. And he wouldn't let it go. And then he pushed me over the edge. And I spoke to my accountant, and he said, let me look at the paperwork. And this is a story I'm going to put in my book because it's classic. He said, let me look at the paperwork. He said, so you've resigned as a director, but you haven't resigned as a shareholder in the business. And I said, I don't know what that means, Matt. So he said, technically, you're still a shareholder. And this was 2 years down the line, right? And I was I was,
oh.
I was paying this huge loan off, or drips off. And if they're listening to this, they're going to cry. It'd be great. So I've never told them. So my accountant said, what they could do is just dissolve your shareholding down to £1, and that would do it. But as you're still a third shareholder, they had a responsibility to give you the annual returns. And I was like, right. He said, so basically they've broken the law. So I went
Oh.
back to them and I said, right, because he pushed me over the edge with a phone call thing. And I went back and said, right, as a shareholder of this business, which they thought I would gone completely, you've broken the law by not supplying the report and accounts on an annual basis. And the balloon went up. They panicked, right? They absolutely panicked. So I had a meeting with one of them and I said, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to take you to court. And he said, we didn't know, Andy. We didn't know. I said, I'm going to take you down. You pushed too far on the phone and that's it. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, you take over my loan repayments and I'll let you off. So they,
Wow.
so they did. They took over the balance of this loan. And my accountant said, all they can do is just dissolve you out if they want to, but they didn't realize. So
Wow.
they ended
Wow.
up paying off my loan, but that was just a way I bounced back, and I thought that will never happen to me again. That is one massive lesson, that they took my money and they threw me out, and then they ended up paying for it anyway. But the lesson from that was, be careful who you go into business with.
Oh, that's an amazing story, and I'm so glad that you managed to get some karma in the picture. They say revenge is a dish best eaten cold, right?
It was pretty cold, but it tasted good.
Yeah, yeah, I bet it did. Oh, what an amazing story. What wisdom you would have got from that, Andy. Well, you did get. That is really, really powerful. I love it. Any more stories around people and good or bad?
Yeah, I bet it's generally good, isn't it? We have a great time with people generally, but you do come across the rogues. I mean, you and we didn't meet, but we connected through property, didn't we?
We did. Yes, indeed. I know you've got a property business, so how active are you in that? And everybody has a niche in property, don't they? So, my niche is I connect high net or ultra high nets with investment opportunities in a very bespoke way, and I only do a very, very small amount of that
Mhm.
because I don't really like to work with people I don't know well, simply because it involves large sums of money. And I think trust is incredibly important. So I'd love to hear about your property business and what it is that you do there as well, Andy.
We've wound it up now, Jane.
Oh, right, okay.
At the time again of talking to you now, we lived in Jersey. So
Mm.
we were looking at property. We had some property that we owned in the UK, and then we looked to go into an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, with three others.
Yep.
to fund a development with a
Yep.
certain developer. And again, that went horribly south because the guy was basically a crook.
Oh my God, there are
Uh,
so many of them.
but this is why we've come out of it, because
Yep.
we've done business with people we have done our due diligence on, again, who've become friends
Yep.
and have turned us over.
Yep.
And that's why we've just said enough is enough. So what we do now is we take the money and we invest in the Disruptors Club in terms of marketing promotion instead, because then we control it. So unfortunately, I'm sure, and I know there are a lot of good people out there in property because I know them, but there's some rogues out there as well, isn't there?
Well, there absolutely are, and I've had that experience as well, and I've spoken to so many people, and I've met a lot of people as well who have lost an awful lot of money investing with, in third party
Mhm.
projects. I absolutely know how it works as well. And unfortunately, because it's a very unregulated industry, the doors are open for those, effectively, those crooks and scam artists to
Mhm.
actually operate. And of course, one of the things that they all have in common is they do tend to be very good salespeople, because if they weren't, they wouldn't manage to get away with it. So they may be very knowledgeable, and often they are. They're often very impressive, very, very charming sociopaths. And it's very, very hard if you're somebody that doesn't have that profile, to spot somebody. And of course, they will have covered their tracks in terms of their profile a lot of the time. So because it's all a very elaborate setup. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that, Andy. And I also completely understand why you would want to invest your money now in something that is your thing, it's your baby.
Yeah, and the other thing was as well, I think it came to a natural conclusion, Jane, because what Jules and I decided is we we want to live a mobile lifestyle, basically. So the
Yeah,
plan is we're going to go and base ourselves in Spain if it all works out, and then
yeah.
we're going to have a motorhome, a boat, and we're going to travel, and we're going to work from those things because that's what we love doing. We love traveling and experience new things. The property business was too, although we weren't hands on in terms of being in the location. It was very time intensive to manage that,
It is.
and that's another reason we said this doesn't fit our lifestyle. And as the Disruptors Club is all about build your business, live your dream life,
Mm,
that didn't fit with our life, if that makes sense.
yes, I completely understand.
So we said let's start, because I'm guilty of starting business. We all are, aren't we, as entrepreneurs? Let's start another
Mm,
business. It's great.
yeah.
And I think I had six on the go, and you just can't manage it. So I think a message to everyone is just manage what you can and do it really, really well. So that was
Mm,
another reason that we got rid of the property business as well.
yeah, yeah. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. So, Andy, I'd just like to ask you about your decision to move to Jersey, and also why you're moving from Jersey now to base yourself in Gibraltar.
Right. Okay. Well, I came here as a nomad, so it was the time when I was saving up for my flying. I was sort of traveling around. I did a lot of surfing at the time, so I was in Cornwall and I was working down there and surfing down there, and I traveled around. And then I saw it's back in the days. It's a long time ago. I saw an offer in a travel agent window, a week in Jersey, full board, £100. I thought, what's not to like?
Mm.
And I'd seen it was the days of Bergerac, and I thought it was brilliant. So I thought, I'll go and have a look. So I actually sent my surfboard over freight, and then I jumped on a plane and I came to Jersey, and that was it. I stayed. I got a job in a bar, and I stayed. And this is where I learned to fly. That's how it all happened in Jersey.
Mm.
And then I stayed here, and then I travelled. I lived in Australia for 3 years, and I moved around. I worked in France and things like that. So Jersey's kind of been a hub for me, and I've gone around until I met Jules, and I stayed here. And now we just it's about what I said about leaving Jersey. It's about traveling for us, Jane. Now that we can do it,
Yeah.
it's a big world out there, isn't it? Where Jersey's kind of really small,
Mm.
and it was one of the reasons that I had the plane here is we could just go to France when we wanted. So it was
Mm.
that escapism, if you like. Whereas
Yes.
now we just, as we're getting a little bit older, we want to experience more. That's why we're going and basing ourselves in Europe, basically.
Yeah, nice. So, are you planning to travel around the world, or is it just a question of, as you said, getting out on the boat, or what does the next couple of years hold for you, Andy?
Probably good question, really good question, because we've asked ourselves that. We've travelled a lot previously, Jules and I. We've done a lot of sort of long haul stuff. I lived in Australia and things like that. So we kind of done that stuff. Europe's we describe Europe as an adult's playground, you know.
Mm.
So we can literally get in the car and we can just keep driving. Whereas in Jersey, you're 9 miles by 5 miles, and it doesn't take long to get anywhere. So for us, it will be, I think, the next 6 to 8 months, maybe a year, will be finding where we want to base ourselves, and then we may buy a place in Spain and then just travel from there, travel Spain and do Europe. To be honest, there's no real vision to go any further because we've got a lot to explore.
I mean, of course, Gibraltar is an interesting part of the world, isn't it? Because it's very much a financial capital, isn't it? There's a lot of, it's a tax haven, isn't it, Gibraltar?
It's quite beneficial, I believe.
Uh-huh. Did that kind of play a part in terms of you moving there? That there's a lot of investors, there's a lot of wealthy people who might be looking for advice and support, or was it just completely random?
It didn't actually. I'll tell you what happened. The plan is to move to Spain, right? But because
Mm.
Jersey's this strange little jurisdiction down here on its own, when you
Yes.
move to Spain, what you do is you exchange your driving license for a Spanish one, and then
Mm.
you're off. Spain don't recognize the Jersey driving license. So we're like, what are we going to do? Because we need to drive down. And it looked like we were going to have to actually move to the UK and become UK residents for 6 months.
Right.
To Jules, we're going the wrong way. We're going north instead of south.
Oh no, no,
And,
that's a very bad idea.
and then we're sat in the little hot tub out the front one night when we're having we call it the hot tub think tank where we do our brainstorming.
Nice.
And I said, why don't we go to Jib? Because that's UK. And I was like inspired because we know the area. We don't really know Jib. We've been there a couple of times. So we looked into it. And they said, yeah, it's fine. Come down, exchange your Jersey driving license for a Gibraltar one. And then after that, after 6 months, you can move into Spain and exchange there. So that's how it came about.
Ah, okay.
However, since then, we've been introduced to a lot of interesting people in Gibraltar. So it's kind of a double whammy, in terms of the, the tax beneficial status and potential opportunities for us as well. So it's one of those things, if it's meant to be, it is, I think.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And just tell us a little bit more about the Disruptors Club. So how does it actually work? If people wanted to work with you in that, is it a short program, a long program? Is it an annual commitment? What does the whole process involve?
Yeah, it started as just a membership, as I say, kind of a business club where people would come in and stay and pay on a monthly basis. And then what we realized we needed is a structure in there. So when we launch in September now, it's based on the 90-day online business launchpad, which is a course that people can go through. And if they act on it and they use the coaching within the group, they could technically launch a business in 90 days, an online business. So
Mm.
it's based on that, and then it's a membership paid for on a monthly basis. So people can stay as long as they want. They can come in for a month, see if it's for them, and they leave. What I've found, I've been involved in some high level, mentoring and memberships around the world,
Hmm.
and this locking you in for a year just doesn't work because things
Oh.
change, don't they? Things change.
Mm.
So we say it's paid monthly. Join us and leave whenever you want, or stay for as long as you want as well. And most of our members are still with us from the start. They're our founding members.
Mm.
So what we do is we launch September. We have a 4-day open cart where people can come and join us. They'll get enrolled into the 90-day online business launchpad. And then inside of that, we have monthly coaching, roundtable hot seats, everything they need to support them along that journey of building their business. So we're kind of hand holding them, but we're giving them a clear path to follow, like a flight path again, Jane, start with the
Mm.
end in mind and work back. And that's how it works. And it works really well now. We've got the structure for them to follow. And the transformations are that's what makes me happy. When you see people leaving their jobs and building their businesses, it's the best in the world.
Absolutely. And I really don't understand. Sometimes I meet people who they start businesses and they don't have any support whatsoever. And I just don't understand how they do it
Mm.
because it's so easy to go wrong, isn't it? And just to go down a rabbit hole, and it's just you can go so much further and so much faster when you're being led and guided by people who've been there and who know what it takes. Why not? Why wouldn't anybody want to do that?
Well, that's it. I think a lot of people don't realize though, there's a lot of noise out there, isn't there? There's so many courses and start your business and everything. And it's
Yeah.
it's it's overwhelming for people, which is what we do is we disrupt that overwhelm because we give them a clear path to follow and we're
Yes.
there every step of the way. And that I'm with you. I get worried about people who are going into businesses who try and then spend all their money and like they're working their credit cards to try and get something off the ground. Where if you looked at it from the outside in, you know it's never going to work.
Yes.
So that's when you say how does it work? We start on the launch pad with what does your life look like? What do you want to achieve out of your life? And
Yeah.
then we'll tell you which business model to choose that will afford you that. You know.
Yeah.
'Cause people will take your money off you all day long, but what
Oh,
they won't
yeah.
tell you is you need money for traffic, for ads, for all of that stuff, you know? What you get with us is you get the hard truth.
Yes. Absolutely. And as you said, many people won't give you that because to build a business requires an investment in marketing, doesn't it?
Does,
And,
yeah.
that is marketing and lead generation are the most important thing when you're
Mhm.
getting a business off the ground.
Yeah.
And of course, that it costs time and effort. And, it's an investment, isn't it? It's
It
not just mindset or knowing about systems or knowing about finance. I mean, all of those things have their place, but the most important thing is where is the money going to come from?
yeah, totally. I think the scary thing I see is that people create these great businesses. They've got the Kajabi platform, it's an investment. They'll open a Shopify print on demand store and they spend all this time and their money doing that. And then they open the doors and it's just crickets. I see
Mm,
that so much where people go, "Why am I not selling anything?" It's because you haven't built a launch runway. You have to have a launch runway. People need to know what you're doing and what you're selling. But it's a sad thing that by then all their money's gone and they've got none left for promotion and marketing.
yes. So, do you find people come into your ecosystem at that point quite often?
Yeah, they do.
Right.
They do.
But
We
when
have a
they
we have a
mess
group at the
up.
minute where when they come into the Facebook group, there's a few questions on there. So where are you on your business building journey?
Yeah.
I'd say I've started, but I've either run out of money or I've maxed out my credit cards, and there's
Hmm.
just confusion on what to do next. So
Yeah.
we have two. We have people saying, "I've got an idea, but I haven't done anything," and then there's
Mhm.
the people who are sort of in up to the knees on it and say, "What do I do now?"
Yeah, so two different kind of groups really, because obviously starting is very different, isn't it? When people have got all the enthusiasm and they've got all the drive and they've got all the ideas but they just don't know what to do. They haven't got a clue and they're not sure what to do first. And then you've as you said, you've got the other group who've actually developed a product. Maybe there's some flaws there. Maybe they need to go back and actually look at their avatar or their process or whatever. But they've basically put the foundations in place. And then from there, it's growth, isn't it?
It's exactly that. It's exactly that. And with the startups, what I always say is you have to validate the idea. You
Yes.
you have to know that there's a demand, and I quote Seth Godin say, people don't buy what you sell, they buy the way it makes them feel. So they're
Yeah,
either buying a solution, a transformation, or an experience. They're not just buying stuff. But you need to know if there's a demand for your product. And
definitely.
and the other thing that we see is people trying to blaze a trail on
Yeah.
something totally new. And again, to quote one of my mentors, Ryan,
Oh, yeah.
he says that pioneers get shot and the settlers get rich. And what he means by that is if you try and create something new that nobody's heard of, you don't have an audience. Nobody knows they need your solution. But
Yeah.
but we often go down that road because we think, well, there's no one in the market. I'm going to have the lion's share. It doesn't always work like that because people don't know who you are, what your solution is, and the fact that they need that. So it's identifying all those things as well before you go off, as you say, down that rabbit hole and spending all the money.
I think that's a really interesting point, actually, because I often say to people that they have to be grateful for the competition because the competition proves that a market exists and they also show you what's working. You've got to look at your competition and say, well, there's something that's not working for them and there's something that is working. But the very fact that they're there means that there is a demand that is being met. So I think that's a really, really interesting point and some great quotes there as well. Thank you.
No, that's good. And the other thing with that, for people thinking, well, I'm going into a space that's full of experts. you can use their audiences to target them on Facebook, which
Mm.
is what we're doing now. So we've got what we call a lead magnet out there, which is a giveaway in exchange for someone else's email address.
Yes.
My audience in Facebook is Tony Robbins, James
Yeah.
Wedmore, Ryan
Yeah.
Levesque, who's my mentor, Stu McLaren. So I'm actually using my mentors and I'm targeting their audiences on Facebook to reach those people.
Mm.
So if you've got an audience, go use it because it's an asset waiting to be tapped into.
Indeed, indeed. Well, Andy, what can I say? It's been such a pleasure to speak to you today, and how enlightening and inspiring and wonderful it's been, really, and to hear about you and Jules and your journey together, and all of your history and experience that's kind of led up to this point. I really have enjoyed our conversation, and I just wanted to thank you again for making the time to be here and to share your journey with our listeners.
Oh, my absolute pleasure, Jen. I'm glad we've finally got to talk as well. We've been trying for about 4 years, haven't we? So it's been my pleasure as well.
Yes, we have. I know. And it's great to get to know you a little bit better. And you're very, very inspired by what you're doing. I think it sounds absolutely fantastic. And I'm hoping that by putting this podcast out, that it will also bring more people into your ecosystem, because I think what you're doing sounds absolutely amazing.
And again, likewise on that, Jen, what you're doing with everything is fantastic. The connection and what you're doing in property as well. I've got an idea for that. I'll share with you outside the podcast as well that I may be able to help you with. But I love what you're doing because, again, it's all about people, isn't it? So it's fantastic.
It really is. Well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the week, and best of luck with your move to Gibraltar.
Thank you. I'll let you know how we go.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thanks, Jane.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Connector podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, why not head over to janebayler.com and order a copy of my free report on building your personal brand. I'd love to connect with you on social media. And finally, don't forget to like and subscribe to my podcast so that you never miss a show. Thanks for listening in, and see you soon.